Picture this. A guy comes back from war carrying more than scars on his skin. He's got an emptiness he can't put into words. Jack Reynolds, 37, is that guy, a war veteran who's seen the worst of the world, and now just wants a reason to get out of bed. One ordinary day, he steps into a modest animal shelter in Arizona, heart heavy, but with a flicker of hope. It wasn't his idea. His sister Emily pushed him. "Go on, Jack. A dog might bring you back." He doesn't know it yet, but fate's waiting for him, with sad eyes and a tail that barely wags. This isn't just an emotional reunion. It's a journey to heal two broken souls. Ready to dive in? The Arizona sun beat down on the dry earth as Jack pulled his old pickup into the shelter's lot, kicking up a cloud of red dust. The air was hot, smelling of parched soil and pine, while distant barks rang out like a chaotic choir greeting newcomers. He hesitated at the door, his worn boots scraping the ground, each step feeling heavier than the last. A war veteran at 37, he'd faced plenty. But here, in this simple place, he felt small. Could Emily be right? Could a dog really chase away the shadows? Inside, the scent shifted to something alive, wet kibble and damp fur, and Jack's eyes scanned the kennels. He didn't know what he was looking for, just felt a void screaming for something. A volunteer with a shy smile pointed to a dim corner. "That one's been here for months. Nobody wants him." Jack stepped closer, and the world stopped. It was Rex, the military dog who'd run beside him through battlefields, now curled up, ears drooping, gaze blank. Jack's heart raced. It felt like a sign from the universe. How'd he end up here? The volunteer didn't know their story, but Jack did. Rex was his partner, his war hero, and now he looked like a stranger. Did the dog still hold any memory of him? "I'll take him," Jack said, voice rough with a lump he couldn't swallow. But adopting Rex was just the start. The real challenge lay ahead. Emily beamed when she heard, but Jack didn't celebrate. In Rex's eyes, he saw a mirror of his own invisible scars. Could one save the other? The drive home was quiet, just the engine's rumble and wind hitting the windows. Rex sat in the back, staring at nothing. Jack gripped the wheel, feeling the weight of it all. What came next? The shelter faded behind them, but the dust lingered in the air, a gritty reminder of where they'd been. Jack glanced back at Rex, his shadow of a companion, and wondered if this was a mistake. Emily's words echoed in his head. "A dog might bring you back." He wanted to believe her, but the stillness in Rex said otherwise. Was there still a spark to find? He pulled into his driveway, a modest cabin framed by twisted pines. The air here smelled of resin and earth, a sharp shift from the shelters. Dry bite. Rex stepped out, slow and unsure, paws crunching gravel. Jack unlocked the door, the creak of hinges slicing the silence. He pointed to a faded cushion in the corner. "That's yours now," he said. But Rex just stood there, rigid. Did he even want this? The first night stretched long. Jack tossed in bed, the hum of crickets outside doing little to ease his mind. Rex stayed in his spot, a dark shape against the wall, breathing slow. Morning broke with a faint glow, the cabin bathed in a chill that seeped through the windows. Jack brewed coffee, its bitter scent filling the space, and watched Rex. Still no movement. He crouched near the dog, close but not too close. "Hey buddy, we're in this together," he said, voice soft. Rex didn't look up, but Jack stayed, there waiting. Could patience crack this shell? The road ahead felt uncertain, like a mission with no map. Jack sipped his coffee, staring out at the pines swaying in the breeze. What would it take to reach Rex? The shelter faded, but the weight in Jack's chest grew heavier as he drove home. The sun dipped low, painting the horizon orange and purple, and the silence in the pickup was thick, broken only by the engine's low growl. Rex sat in the back, a quiet shadow, muzzle resting on his paws like the world outside wasn't worth the effort. Jack glanced in the rearview mirror, and what he saw twisted his gut. Those eyes, once so full of life, now looked like deep, empty wells, dulled by time and war. At the cabin, a simple place surrounded by gnarled pines, Jack opened the truck door with a rusty groan. "Come on, buddy," he called, trying to sound light, but his voice wobbled, laced with a hope he barely recognized. Rex climbed out slow, paws hitting the gravel with a dry thud. Hesitant, like every step was a tough call. The air smelled fresh with resin and wet wood, a far cry from the shelter's dust, but the dog didn't seem to notice. Inside, the floorboards creaked under their weight. Jack pointed to an old cushion in the corner, something he'd rigged up as a bed. "That's your spot now," he said, but Rex stood stiff, shoulders scarred with tales Jack knew too well. He knelt, trying to meet the dog's eyes, but Rex turned his head away, dodging like it hurt to remember. It was crushing. This was the service dog who dashed at his command, barked at shadows before they turned deadly, slept by his side in the Afghan desert's cold nights. Jack could still hear the jingle of Rex's military vest in his mind, the clink of tags. But here in that moment, the loyal partner didn't know him, or worse, didn't want to. Had trauma erased it all? He tried again, reaching out slow. "Hey Rex, it's me," he whispered, heart squeezed tight like he was begging for a sign. The dog sniffed the air for a second, wet nose quivering, then shrank back, pressing against the wall. The stale coffee smell in the cabin felt suffocating, now mixed with a tension Jack couldn't shake. His own PTSD roared loud in his chest. He knew what it was to shut out the world, to carry invisible scars nobody got. Looking at Rex was like staring in a mirror. Two war survivors, broken in different ways, but the same in pain. Who'd have thought a dog could bear a burden so human? Jack stood, joints popping loud enough to echo down the hall. He went to the window, the sky darkening fast, frogs croaking outside like they mocked their loneliness. He wanted to yell, ask the universe why it brought Rex back just to show this void. But he stayed quiet, watching the dog's reflection in the foggy glass. That first night was a trial. Jack tossed kibble into a metal bowl, the clatter ringing in the silent house. Rex didn't budge, ignoring it like it was an insult. Jack sank onto the couch, head in his hands, feeling the sting of an emotional reunion that never came. Had he messed up? Next day, the sun crept in, slanting through the blinds. Jack woke with a stiff neck, body griping from a bad night. Rex was still in his corner, but lying down now, chest rising and falling slow. He hadn't eaten, but he'd rested, a thin thread of relief for Jack to cling to. Emily called early, voice bright with curiosity. "So how's your new pal?" Jack eyed the dog, pausing. "Not sure he's my pal yet," he said, honesty cutting sharp. She laughed, trying to lift him. "Give it time, Jack, he's just lost." Lost, it fit them both. He tried once more. Grabbed a piece of jerky from the pantry, its salty tang filling the air, and offered it to Rex. The dog raised his muzzle, eyes blinking slow, but didn't take it. Jack left it on the floor a few steps away and waited. Could a simple move start to chip the ice? The afternoon dragged, a nearby creek's murmur bringing a calm Jack didn't feel inside. He sat on the floor near Rex, not pushing. "We've been through worse, right, buddy?" he said, more to himself than the dog. Rex tilted his head just a bit, and Jack held his breath. No big moment came, no happy bark or wagging tail. But that slight turn was the first hint. Tiny, almost nothing, but enough for Jack to think not all was lost. Was the old Rex still in there somewhere? The day ended with them in silence, each in their corner, but sharing the space with less resistance, for the first time. Jack gazed at the starry sky through the window, a faint warmth in his chest. Maybe the universe knew what it was doing after all. Where would they go from here? Morning came quiet to the cabin, the kind of hush that weighs more than noise. Jack woke to a woodpecker tapping a tree far off, a stubborn drumming that seemed to say, "Get up, life doesn't wait." The air carried a light whiff of dew and moss, slipping through cracked windows, but inside the mood was thick, a stubborn void between him and Rex. The dog was still on the cushion, eyes half open like the world was just a blur. Jack decided he wouldn't give up. He'd adopted Rex for a reason, even if the dog didn't know it yet. He grabbed the metal bowl, its scrape on the floor ringing like an off-key bell, and filled it with fresh kibble. "Let's try again, buddy," he said, voice hoarse from a rough night. But Rex didn't lift his head, just let out a deep sigh, chest heaving like he was saying, "Leave me be." It tore at him, but Jack knew this game. His own PTSD had built high walls too, and tearing them down took time. He sat a few feet away, the cold floor biting his legs, and stayed there, quiet, just watching. Anyone who's been through war knows. Pushing too hard only makes it worse, right? The next few days tested his patience and persistence. Jack woke early, coffee bubbling in the pot with a warm scent that filled the cabin, and tried something new. One day, he left the back door open, wind carrying the rustle of leaves and the sweet smell of alfalfa from a nearby field. Rex raised, his muzzle sniffing the air for a moment, then sank back down. Jack nearly grinned. "Caught you thinking, huh?" But kept the wind to himself. He started talking to Rex even without a reply. "Remember that night in Kandahar when you found that hole before I did?" he'd say, voice low, almost a secret between them. The dog didn't react, but Jack kept going, tossing combat memories into the air like crumbs for a skittish bird. Sometimes he thought he saw a glint in Rex's eyes, but it might have been just the light. The emotional distance was a chasm. But Jack didn't back off. One afternoon he swept the floor, the broom's bristles scratching the wood and filling the space. Rex lifted his head, curious about the motion, and Jack froze, holding his breath. "Like the show, do you?" he teased, a soft laugh slipping. "Out." The dog looked away but stood up, a tiny step but a step. The food stayed untouched when he was around. Jack tried everything, mixing in ground beef, warming the kibble, even whistling like he did on missions. Nothing. But one night, with the sky rumbling and rain pounding the roof, he saw it. Rex crept to the bowl while Jack pretended to sleep on the couch, the soft tap of paws nearly lost in the storm. By morning, the bowl was empty. Jack chuckled alone. "You sly dog." The shift to this new life was slow, but the signs were there. Rex still wouldn't come close, but sometimes he'd stop at the door, watching Jack stack firewood or fix a broken chair. The smell of smoke and motor oil seemed to pique his interest, like it tugged him somewhere he tried to forget. Jack noticed and let the dog set the pace. A week later, the sun blazed, and Jack sat on the porch with a glass of iced water, the condensation dripping in his hand. Rex appeared at the door, hesitating, nails clicking on the wooden step. "Come on out. It's your space too," Jack said, not looking straight at him. The dog stayed there, just watching, but didn't bolt. It was small, but to Jack, it was gold. The bond they'd once had was shattered, no doubt. But in the silences and little moves, something new was sprouting. Jack learned not to expect barks or leaps. With Rex, healing came in quiet bits. Did the dog feel it too? The routine became an unspoken deal. Jack offered, Rex chose. One morning he tossed an old sock on the floor just to see. Rex sniffed, gave it a timid paw, and retreated. Jack laughed loud this time. "Getting picky, huh?" The sound of his own laugh caught him off guard. It had been a while. Progress was a thin, tough thread. Rex still carried trauma, invisible scars marking every pause, but so did Jack. They were in the same boat, rowing slow against the current. What if patience was the key to it all? Emily called again, asking how things were going. He ate behind. "My back," Jack said, a hint of pride in his voice. She laughed. "You're hiding less too, you know." He went quiet, thinking. Maybe she was right. Night fell with a clear sky, stars twinkling like old lanterns. Jack looked at Rex, now lying closer to the door, and felt a warmth he couldn't explain. The dog wasn't the military partner of old, but he wasn't a stranger either. What came after this? The sun was high when Jack decided to dig into the past. The cabin smelled of warm wood and leftover bacon he'd fried earlier, the greasy aroma lingering like a memory of simpler days. He went to the closet, the old door creaking loud, and pulled out a dusty box he hadn't touched in years. Inside, Rex's military vest, still caked with dry mud and torn on one side, seemed to shout stories Jack wished he could forget. But today, he wanted to remember, for Rex. He sat on the floor, the vest's rough fabric scraping his calloused hands, and called the dog with a tone that mixed command and plea. "Come here, buddy, look at this." Rex was lying by the window, sunlight striping his matted fur, but didn't move. Jack held the vest up, the metal tags jingling like a broken bell. For a second, Rex's ears twitched, then drooped again. He didn't quit. He grabbed an old whistle from the box, a battered brass thing he'd used on missions to call Rex through the chaos of blasts. He blew it soft, and the sharp sound sliced the air, shrill like a scream stuck in his throat. Rex's head shot up, eyes wide, body taut like a bomb had gone off inside. Jack stopped, heart pounding. "You remember, don't you?" he whispered, almost scared of the answer. It was a piece of the battlefield coming alive. Jack could still smell the acrid sting of gunpowder and churned earth from those days, the weight of dust sticking to his skin. Rex sniffed out danger before him, barked at shadows that turned real. But here, in the cabin, the dog shrank back, pressing against the wall, tail tucked. The trauma ran deep, an echo that wouldn't hush. Jack dropped the whistle to the floor, the metallic clank hitting the wood like a full stop. "It's okay, I get it," he said, voice low, heavy with guilt he wouldn't own. He had nights where thunder turned to gunfire, where silence meant waiting for something bad. Who'd have thought man and dog could share the same hell? He tried again the next day, grabbed an old tennis ball, its green fuzz worn and musty, and rolled it across the floor. "Go get it, like old times," he urged, recalling rare breaks. Between patrols when Rex chased it with a joy that made even soldiers laugh. The dog stared, muzzle quivering for a moment, but didn't go. Jack let out a dry laugh. "Making me work for it, huh?" The echoes came in waves. One afternoon, he opened the window, letting the distant thrum of a helicopter, a delivery in town, drift in. Rex went alert, paws firm on the floor, gaze lost in something Jack couldn't see. It was the military dog of old, ready to run, but the spark faded fast, and he retreated. Jack felt a pang in his chest. We lost so much. Didn't we? He switched tactics, no more whistles or balls for a bit. He took an old rag, cut it into strips, tied a knot, the smell of grease from his hand sticking to it, tossed it near Rex, casual. "Yours if you want it," he said, heading to the kitchen. He heard a faint shuffle, peeked, and saw the dog, sniffing it, wary. A thread of hope lit up. Combat memories weren't just noise and running. There were quiet nights, the desert sky ablaze with stars, Rex's warmth against him as they rested. Jack folded a blanket on the floor by the couch one night, just to test it. Rex watched from afar, his breathing blending with the fire's crackle. He didn't come close, but he didn't flee either. It was jagged progress, full of back and forth. Rex's trauma was a wall, but Jack knew how to breach defenses. His own were in pieces for years. He started humming low, a random tune dancing in the air. Rex tilted his head, just a touch, and Jack grinned. "Listening to me, you stubborn thing." Days passed and the familiar objects became bridges. The vest stayed in a corner, the whistle tucked away, but the knotted rag popped up in Rex's path now and then, like he was testing the waters. Jack caught every flicker, a longer glance, a less hesitant step. The past still hurt, but maybe it hurt less together. Emily showed up one morning, bringing homemade bread that filled the house with a yeasty warmth. "So, is he turning back into Rex?" she asked, eyeing the dog. Jack shrugged. "He never stopped being Rex, just got buried." She nodded, getting more than she let on. One night Jack sat on the porch, the cool air carrying cricket chirps and the scent of damp earth after a drizzle. Rex stepped to the door, rag in his mouth, and stood there, still. Jack chuckled soft. "Showing me who's boss, huh?" The dog dropped it. A small move, but it weighed tons. The echoes were there, but not just of war. They were of loyalty. A bond time and pain tried to erase, but that kept beating. Jack looked at the stars, feeling a shift. Was Rex starting to remember? Morning brought a gray sky, the kind that hints at rain but holds back. Jack opened the cabin door, and a cool breeze swept in, smelling of wet leaves and a faint whiff of chimney smoke from somewhere nearby. He glanced at Rex, sprawled near the cold fireplace, his black and gray fur looking more alive in the soft light filtering through the window. "New day, buddy," he said, voice rough but edging toward cheer. Would something change today? He kept it simple, grabbed a red rubber ball, the squeaky kind, and rolled it across the wooden floor, the bounce echoing like a shy invite. Rex lifted his muzzle, eyes tracking it for a second but didn't chase. Jack laughed low. "Testing me, huh? Fine, I'll wait." And he did, settling on the couch with a mug of tea that smelled of lemon balm. The day crawled by, but Jack didn't push. He set the kibble bowl down as usual, the metal clinking a familiar tune, and stepped out to sweep the porch. The broom's scrape mixed with a new sound, light paws on wood. He turned slow and saw Rex at the door, just watching, tail still but eyes sharp. "Curious, are you?" he asked, a grin sneaking out. Patience was paying off. One afternoon, Jack sat on the floor with a rawhide bone he'd picked up in town, its strong, salty scent filling the air. "This is fit for a king, you know," he said, holding it out. Rex paused, then took a step, then another, until he sniffed Jack's hand. The wet nudge of his nose on Jack's skin hit like a spark, small but electric. The dog took the bone and retreated, but Jack celebrated quiet. First win. The micro signs were there, tucked in the details. Rex started sitting when Jack said sit, the command slipping out like old times. It wasn't fast or perfect. His paws shook a bit, the trauma still heavy, but he did it. Jack's chest warmed. "You're still in there, aren't you, buddy?" he asked, mostly to himself. One night wind rattled the windows, branches tapping the roof like restless fingers. Jack was on the couch, a book open he barely read, when he heard a shuffle. Rex came slow, lay a few steps away, muzzle down but eyes locked on Jack. It was the first time the dog chose to be near without a call. "Liking my company, admit it," Jack teased, and he swore the tail twitched, just a hair. Trust crept in quiet, like a plant sprouting unnoticed. Rex began sniffing Jack's hand when he offered food, the dog's warm breath mingling with the smell of jerky or stale bread Jack used to tempt him. It wasn't every day, but it was enough for Jack to believe the bond was inching back. One day he tossed the ball again, out of sheer stubbornness. It bounced, squeaked, and Rex gave an awkward leap, like his body remembered before his mind. He didn't grab it, but chased it a few feet, nails scratching the floor. Jack laughed loud, the sound bouncing in the cabin. "Look at you, almost a pup again." Rex stopped, glanced at him, and retreated. But there was a new glint in his eyes. The routine became a silent pact. Jack offered, Rex decided. One morning he whistled low, stacking firewood, the tune fading into the embers' crackle. Rex padded to the kitchen door, stood there watching. Jack left a bread scrap on the floor and looked away. Minutes later, it was gone. "Clever thief," he muttered, heart light. Emily dropped by that weekend, bringing an apple pie that filled the house with sweet, warm spice. "He's looking more alive," she said, nodding at Rex chewing his bone in the corner. Jack nodded. "Yeah, but he's still a stubborn one." She laughed. "You both are." And she was right. They were rebuilding through that stubbornness. The signs were small but solid. Rex didn't jump in his lap or bark with glee, but he chose to be close, to share the space. Jack knew trauma didn't vanish overnight. His own invisible scars lingered too. Quiet, but there. Who hasn't craved just a safe corner to breathe? One afternoon, he sat on the porch, sun on his face, a creek's murmur in the distance bringing rare peace. Rex came, lay a few steps off, body relaxed for the first time in weeks. Jack looked at him, a knot in his throat loosening. Was this the start of something bigger? Fall crept into the cabin slow, bringing a chill that nipped at the fingers and a sky that felt closer to the ground. Jack lit the fireplace every night, the smell of burning wood mingling with the snap of embers, a simple comfort he hadn't had in ages. Rex was there, closer to the fire now, fur glowing coppery in the flickering light. "Like the heat, huh?" Jack asked, voice soft like he was talking to an old pal. The dog didn't answer, but he stayed, and that was plenty. Days grew shorter, and the silence between them turned into company, not a void. Jack stopped forcing words or big moves, letting Rex call the shots. One morning he chopped wood outside, the axe's sharp thwack echoing through the pines, and spotted Rex at the window watching. The air carried fresh sap and turned earth, and Rex stayed there quiet, just looking. Jack smiled to himself. "Keeping an eye on me now, are you?" Nights shifted. Jack spread a blanket by the couch, its rough weave smelling of old wool and a hint of soap. Rex started coming closer, first lying a few steps off, then nearer, until one night he picked the blanket's edge. His weight made the floorboards creak soft, and Jack felt a warmth not from the fire. "Getting bold, huh?" he teased, but let him be. It was a slow acceptance, no fanfare. Rex began sleeping near Jack's bed, not on it, but right there. The sound of his breathing a low hum that filled the room. Night air slipped through the window crack, Daiju a bite of ice and pine, but the dog didn't curl up tight anymore. He seemed at ease, like he knew it was safe. Jack woke sometimes just to hear it, a sound that said more than barks. One day he dropped a glass of water, the clatter of it bouncing on the floor, slicing the quiet. Rex jolted up, body tense but didn't run, settled back after a beat, eyes on Jack like he was asking for calm. "Sorry, buddy." "Clumsy hands," Jack said, chuckling light. The dog huffed, almost a grumble, and Jack swore it was the closest to a chat they'd had. Healing came in gentle moves. Jack started running his hand over Rex's fur, light when the dog allowed. The touch was cautious, the smell of earth and oil from his hands blending with the tangled coat. Rex didn't pull away anymore, sometimes even tilting his head like he enjoyed it. "Getting spoiled, you know that?" Jack ribbed, but his heart was full. The couch became their meeting spot. One afternoon, with weak sun spilling through the curtains, Rex climbed up slow, paws denting the worn upholstery. Jack was on the other end, book in hand, and said nothing, just let him. The dog lay down, muzzle toward the window, weight sinking, the seat. A raven's caw outside felt far off, but in the cabin, their shared silence was everything. They were sorting it out, each with their invisible scars. Jack knew trauma didn't just vanish. He had nights waking sweaty, gunfire echoes. His head, and saw Rex twitch in sleep like he was running from something. But together, under the same roof, it felt lighter. Who hasn't found peace in a gaze that doesn't judge? Emily showed up one frosty morning, hair tangled in a scarf, toting a bag of chestnuts that smelled like Christmas. "Look at you two. A team again?" she said, pointing at Rex on the couch. Jack shrugged. "He's the boss now." She laughed, but she was right. The old military dog was turning into a different kind of partner. Their silence wasn't hollow. It was full of understanding. Rex started trailing Jack around the house, not glued to him, but close enough to hear his steps on the floor. One night Jack whistled a random tune, the sound floating free, and Rex raised his head, eyes glinting in the dim. "Enjoying the show, huh?" he asked, and the dog's tail thumped once, small but real. That's how they were healing, no rush. The past lingered in dream shadows and Rex's tremors, but the present was gaining ground. Jack looked at the dog, feeling the universe had put them together for a reason. Was the worst finally behind them? The day dawned with a shy sun, filtered through clouds like torn cotton. Jack peered out the window, cool air bringing the smell of fresh-cut grass and a hint of diesel from some far-off tractor. He grabbed the truck keys, metal cold in his palm, and called Rex with a mix of certainty and doubt. "Let's take a ride, buddy." The dog lifted his head from the couch, eyes blinking slow, and came. Not fast, but he came. Jack felt a flutter in his gut. Time for a test. The park was a few miles off, a spot they knew well from service days. Jack parked by a crooked oak, the engine dying with a tired sigh. Kids' shouts drifted from afar, blending with a crow's hoarse call perched in the branches. Rex stepped out, paws hitting soft ground with a muffled thud, and stood there, sniffing the air like he recognized something. Jack held his breath. Did he remember? It was a nostalgic scene, almost a gateway to the past. Years back, Rex raced. Through those trees, military vest swaying as he chased a ball Jack tossed between drills. The smell of damp earth and tree bark still hung in the air, but now the dog moved slow, body etched with scars telling a different tale. Jack pointed. To the open field. Go on, buddy, like before. Rex wavered, tail low, eyes sweeping the space. Jack pulled the red rubber ball from his pocket, its faint squeak sounding as he squeezed. He rolled it across the grass, the bounce echoing old times. The dog took a step, then another, and stopped. Jack nearly gave up. But then he saw. Rex ran, not a gallop but a clumsy trot, paws kicking up dirt. That's it, buddy, he yelled, heart racing. The emotional leap hit hard. Rex grabbed the ball, wet muzzle glinting in the sun, and came back slow, dropping it at Jack's feet. He wasn't the military dog of old, bursting with energy and precision, but he was Rex, the Rex coming back to life. Jack laughed, loud enough to spook a nearby bird. You've still got it, huh? He said, crouching to grab the ball. He threw it again, farther this time, and Rex went after it, tail wagging faint. A sight Jack hadn't seen in months. The wind in the leaves seemed to cheer, carrying a whiff of wildflowers blooming near. The creek. The dog returned, ball in mouth, eyes shining with what might have been joy or at least relief. Jack's eyes stung, but he rubbed his nose to cover it. The park buzzed around them, a kid yelling for his mom to fly a kite, a couple walking a yappy little dog. Rex didn't mind the noise, just stayed close, playing at his own pace. It was like the trauma had loosened its grip for a moment. Jack sat on the grass, ground cool against his legs, and let Rex lie beside him. We're good here, aren't we? He murmured. There was a hiccup that nearly broke the spell. A car horn blared sharp on the nearby road, sounding like a shot. Rex's ears flattened, body stiff, but Jack laid a steady hand on his back. It's all right, I'm here, he said, and the dog eased up slow, muzzle brushing his leg. It was a test, sure, but they were passing it together. The afternoon faded, the sky turning pink and gold. Jack tossed the ball once more, and Rex ran, lighter now, almost playful. He came back and dropped it in Jack's lap, the wet weight making him laugh. Messing with me now, huh? He teased, wiping his hand on his pants. The dog flopped on the grass, panting, but with a look that said, I can do this. It was more than play. It was a powerful sign. The Rex of before, his war partner, was there, mixed with the Rex of now, the survivor finding a way forward. Jack gazed at the horizon, feeling like the universe had winked at them. Was this the end of the storm? Winter knocked on the cabin's door with a wind howling through the pines, bringing the smell of fresh snow and a cold that stung the nose. Jack lit the fireplace, flames dancing with a crackle that warmed to the bones. Rex was there, sprawled, on the old rug by the fire, fur glowing with orange flecks. Jack looked at him, a good weight settling in his chest. You're home now, huh, buddy? He said, voice thick with something like gratitude. Months had flowed by like a calm river, washing away the last bits of hesitation. Rex wasn't the military dog of old, nor the stranger hunched in the shelter. He was a new partner, rebuilt piece by piece. One morning, Jack opened the door to the yard, snow crunching under his boots, mixing with a stubborn bird's song. Rex followed, nose buried in the white, and came back with a stick in his mouth. Bringing me gifts now? Jack laughed, taking the twig. Trust was in the details. Rex lay on the couch with Jack every night, his weight sinking the cushions till they groaned, the smell of wet fur and dry earth becoming part of the place. Once, Jack scratched behind his ears, nails on skin making Rex close his eyes and let out a long sigh. Turning into a lord, huh? He teased, but kept his hand there, feeling the dog's heat against his fingers. The past tried knocking once. A thunderclap shook the sky, rattling the windows, and Rex sprang up, paws trembling. Jack didn't speak, just slid to the floor and sat beside him. rain scent slipping through the door crack. The dog leaned a shoulder into him, and they stayed like that, waiting it out. "We face this together," he murmured, and Rex rested, his head on his leg, a simple move that weighed the world. It was a rebuilt bond forged in patience and unconditional love. Rex trailed Jack around the house, nails on the floorboards a soundtrack to their days. One afternoon, he brought the red ball, dropped it at Jack's feet, and stared, tail wagging slow. Jack threw it, and Rex ran, a hoarse bark echoing for the first time in years. "Listen to you singing now," he laughed, his voice blending with the dog's. Healing didn't erase the invisible scars, but it found a way to live with them. Jack still had rough nights, waking with his heart in his throat, but seeing Rex there, breathing steady, pulled him back. The dog dreamed too, paws twitching like he was running, but now woke and looked at Jack like saying, "I'm okay." Who'd have thought two broken souls could mend like this? Emily showed up one late afternoon, bringing a stew that filled the cabin with garlic and herb warmth. "You two look like a family," she said, nodding at Rex gnawing a bone in the corner. Jack gave a half smile. "Guess we always were, just took a while to remember." She nodded, letting a silence say the rest. The symbolic moment came soft. One night with snow falling outside, Jack sat on the couch, a mug of hot chocolate in hand, steam rising with a sweet, cozy smell. Rex climbed up slow, lay beside him, and without warning, rested his head on Jack's leg. The weight was solid, warm, real. Jack froze, eyes watering. "You trust me again, don't you?" he whispered, and the dog huffed low like an answer. They'd found peace, two war-wounded veterans learning to live beyond it. The snow tapping the roof was a whisper, the fire crackled faint, and Rex slept there, breath slow against Jack's pant leg. It was more than a fresh start. It was a promise kept of loyalty not even time could break. Jack looked at the dog, then the starry sky through the window, feeling the universe had made peace with them. What more could you ask for? And there, in the cabin's quiet with snow falling outside and the fire dancing in the hearth, Jack and Rex found what war tried to steal: peace. It wasn't quick or easy. There were days of emptiness, nights of echoes, but they got there, leaning on each other like only old friends can. Rex's head on Jack's leg wasn't just a gesture. It was an "I'm here" worth more than words. Two hearts scarred by invisible wounds, a war veteran and his military dog, proved unconditional love can fix what time breaks. Sometimes the greatest teachers have four paws, don't they? Rex taught Jack patience, to wait for the sun after storm, and Jack showed the dog a home isn't just a roof. It's where you can be what's left of yourself, no fear. They rebuilt a bond that seemed lost, and along the way they healed. Maybe the universe brought them back together to remind us that loyalty, that stubborn, quiet thing, outlasts everything. So what about you? Ever had an animal change your life? A critter that looked you in the eye and said without words it'd all be okay? Tell us in the comments. We want to hear your story. If you love Jack and Rex's emotional ride, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell. Catch you next time when we bring another tale to tug at your heart.